All right, welcome Mike Swan to Northwestern Voices. It's good to have you here. So I'll start by saying that I think if we listed all of your accomplishments and background information, that would literally take up the entire podcast. You gave me actually three different resumes of all the things that you've done, and they each pertain to a different area of focus. But so I'm going to highlight just a few items on those resumes, so just so people have an idea of who you are and what kind of man you are. So, business wise, you're currently a cultural liaison and Ojibwe teacher at the Detroit Lakes High School.
That's
Do you
true.
still do that? Yep. Enrolled member of White Earth Band of Chippewa, and it says Chippewa Ojibwa. I don't know if what's the.
It's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
And also the chairman at the Pine Point Community Council
Yep.
in Ponsford, which is we'll talk about that later, but that's also on the White Earth Reservation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then for over in your past over 10 years, you served as the director of natural resources for the management of natural resources on the White Earth Reservation.
Yep, that's
So
correct.
in charge of that.
Yes.
And presently, I know you from also being on the board of the Northern Light Opera Company.
Oh, yes.
And you're also on the Native Advisory Committee at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And last but not least, you're a 1973 graduate of Park Rapids High School.
Yes, it was just a 50-year reunion this past summer.
Yep. Did you go to the reunion?
Yes, I did. Met a lot of guys I haven't seen since high school.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It had been 50 years since you've seen some of them?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to people like that who you haven't seen for a long time, if they're friends and stuff like that, do you find that you can kind of just pick up where you left off 50 years ago, or is it kind of like meeting a new person all over again?
Oh, we just kind of picked up a lot. We were 50 years ago because I was eventually jumping to table to table, just visiting people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun,
Yeah.
just catching up to see what everybody was doing over the past 50 years, where they live at, what they're doing in their careers or anything like that. Some I was kind of surprised about. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't think so when I thought about going. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, 50 years, we're just going to go be a bunch of old people. No, but there wasn't.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a lot of fun just catching up with them and everybody. And a lot of it, some people I couldn't remember their names, but I can remember their faces. And it was lucky we had this little sheet that had everybody's name, so kind of
Jog your memory on that.
yeah.
Did you play any sports in high school?
I played baseball. I loved baseball when I was in high school. I played basketball. I couldn't play football because I was always I didn't start for 2 weeks after everybody else because I was always helping my father at that time.
Doing what?
We were racing,
Okay.
gathering wild rice.
Mm-hmm.
I was his partner, and for 2 weeks in September, I would go out racing with him and gather rice, either to sell or to process. And I tried to go out for football, but I was always late to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried it once, and the coach said, you're just kind of late to do this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to come in and learn all the plays and everything else like that. And
Yeah.
I had good size on me at that.
I was gonna ask, yeah, because usually they want the big guys in the to play football, but
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I was helped my dad, and
Yeah.
I had good memories with that.
so what's that process like? The ricing process, like just on a typical day, how does that work?
Oh, I was just thinking about that. I was talking to kids about that here just a couple of days ago. They're talking about the ricing, and I remember I was about 10 years old when I first started ricing, and my uncle put me out in the grass and showed me how to knock the rice. So we went out ricing. First time as a kid, and I had about 75 pounds of green rice in the boat. And coming in, and after a couple hours, and we came out of the rice, and about 30 feet there was a shore. And I could see people bagging up their rice and everything, and all of a sudden, over we went, and my uncle tipped us over. And I'm out there as a kid splashing around, and I could hear him saying, "Save the rice, save the rice." And he's looking at me, and me splashing around. He picked me up by the back of the collar of my T-shirt and said, "Stand up." So I stood up, and I was only to my chest. That was my first experience in racing.
Yeah.
But me and my father, we used to go all over the area in racing, and some of these lakes I have no idea where they're at anymore. And we would go out and spend a day together. Yeah. And some of them we'll sell, but some of it we kept. And he would do the parching of the rice. And because of my size and not being really heavy, I would dance on the rice and to separate the hulls and the seeds. And my grandmother would take it then and toss it in the wind and let the chaff go like that to clean the rice. Mm-hmm. And we did that for many years. Yeah. And that was kind of like a traditional way of doing it. It was a family event. My sisters were all there, and they didn't, he had them clean the rice too, but he didn't want them to parch the rice or dance on it like me.
Why not?
It's just a belief. He said that's a man's job to do. He said, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's my duty as a man to do this and get it done and get it ready for them to clean it.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the harvesting process like? You talked about being out in a boat, and I mean, for someone who's never done this before or seen it done before, what does it entail?
Well, I was a lot of times on what they call the knocker, grabbing the two long sticks, about a yard long, and bringing the rice over, tapping it, rice would fall in, both sides like that, and my father would be poling it, and the pole would be like about 20 feet long. And
the pole is to direct the boat, basically?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he'll be at the back of the boat. I'll be in front of him and make the rice fall in. And when he's ricing, he would be watching the blackbirds to see where the blackbirds were at, because they would, the blackbirds would be hanging around the ripe rice. So that's where we head to mm-hmm. get the ripe rice instead of the green rice, because the ripe rice will fall off easier than the green rice. Yeah. So, it's not easy work. And you're sitting there and you got spiders and you got worms and ladybugs and crawling all over you. But, and you also have to watch out for getting rice beers in your eyes and your throat and like that. To protect yourself, you have to wear glasses to protect yourself, but it's not an easy job. It's hard work, basically, especially if we get the boat full of rice. Sometimes we'll go out and we'll get about 300 pounds of rice, me and my dad, and that was a good day.
So I guess I didn't understand this. So you're not cutting anything. No, you're just beating the rice out of the plant or the stalk or whatever.
You're just knocking it, and the ripe rice will fall off.
And it goes right into the boat then.
Yes.
And what kind of boat are you using?
We're using a canoe.
Okay. And this canoe can then control with this pole, and you're going around. So I mean, and that sounds like a traditional way of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, and so then you get the boat to shore, and you've got all of this ripe rice, hopefully, and not as much green rice, and then that gets put where?
We bag it up, and usually these big gunny sacks, and that's where we're gonna take it to the either processor, rice buyer.
Mm-hmm.
We knew a couple of buyers around the area that always bought the rice. And but sometimes we'll take it out at home and we put it on a tarp to dry it out.
And then that whole process of dancing on it and all that took place after it was dried out.
Yes.
And it was on the tarp and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you actually put something on top of it, or you just walk right on the rice itself when you're doing that?
It would be like dig a hole and put the tarp on top of in that hole,
mm-hmm.
and we put. After it's parched, we'll put it in that your hole, and I'll dance on it with my shoes.
Yeah,
and that clean shoes.
Yeah, and that causes it to separate out, and then the women's job would be to kind of shake it out.
Willing, throwing it in the air and cleaning it out.
And then it gets packaged for distribution.
Yeah.
So when you go to the supermarket now, sometimes you see this white or wild rice is packaged in a small little package and everything like that. It's usually pretty expensive, and like as far as that goes, is most of that wild rice you see in the grocery store, is that harvested in this kind of way, or is this more commercial?
No, it's
now?
not. It's a lot of it you see is commercial harvest, and we call it cultivated rice.
Mm-hmm.
We call it paddy rice. There's a difference between paddy rice and natural lake rice, and the way you process it. If you process the way we do it, and it'll take only about like 20 minutes to cook. Whereas you look at the cultivated rice, paddy rice, that usually takes about an hour
mm-hmm.
to cook.
Mm-hmm. So where would a person be able, I mean, if let's say you wanted to buy the good rice, the stuff that only takes 20 minutes to cook, is there a place that a person could buy that around here?
Yes, they can. A matter of fact, the labeling on the package itself
mm-hmm.
should identify it as either cultivated or lake rice, because in 1987 we took me and some other people took the paddy rice industry to enforce the labeling law.
Oh.
And to not have the paddy rice industry sell their rice with a canoe or Indian person on their packaging.
Yeah, yeah.
And we won that case, and ever since then they had to put it as paddy or cultivated rice.
Where was that case brought?
We did that in. We started in Bemidji and moved to Minneapolis. In
federal court.
Yeah, federal court.
Good. That was a good positive ruling, a good outcome for you then,
Yeah.
It seems like. Yeah. So now if you go to the grocery store, we're going to look for the label that says lake rice.
Yep.
Okay. So let's say you're going to go home and cook some lake rice. How would you prepare it, and what would you serve with it? That kind of thing.
Oh, I prepare it in a lot of different ways. First of all, I put it in a pan, rinse it out a couple times, make sure it's all clean. Then my personal is eating it straight out.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing added or anything like that. Just eating it straight. But you can mix it up with a hot dish, or you can look it up in another way is add it to wild rice pancakes, or we just had wild rice meatloaf, hot dishes. There's a lot of different ways to make it.
It works for breakfast too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I think it's healthy for you too. It's a good solid thing to eat in the morning.
Yeah. A couple years ago, I just had the meat market make some wild rice cheddar cheese sausage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that was good.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty good. So we've had a few guests on here, and kind of learning a little bit about the area here, and the general consensus is that the town of Park Rapids the municipality of Park Rapids was founded sometime in like the late 1800s, but we know that people have been living in this area a lot longer than that. So as far as you know, how long have people actually been living in this area?
Oh my God. Way before it became a state.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm Ojibwe, I started digging into the history
Yeah.
of the area, and way before the state and towns and everything
This
else.
Minnesota
like that.
Statehood, I think, was 1858, right? Something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
and the White Reservation was 1867.
Okay.
But even before that, the Ojibways and the Lakota people fought for this area, fought for the resources, and they had wars out here.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, where I live at Pine Point, and this had to be in around 1600s, that Pine Point was like a base camp for the Ojibways, and the Ojibways pushed the Lakota people out of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And the tale that I heard was they could see they used the Smoky Hills as a lookout, and they could see a large group of Lakota people coming, warriors coming. And so the Ojibways went out and met them, and they fought for about 3 days.
Where?
In what present day Tamarack is.
Tamarack.
Refuge.
Oh yeah, the refuge. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
And the Ojibways brought all their wounded and dead to Pine Point, whereas the Lakotas buried theirs right there in that location. And they got these large mounds, 3 large mounds over 100 feet long of all these warriors that was killed in the action.
Is that locatable today?
Yeah.
That area? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just that we protect that area so no one goes out there and digs. And it's by a flat lake over there in Tamarack Refuge.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this happened around the 1600s.
Yeah.
So they used this whole area, the Crowing River and all this stuff to paddle. And they used to gather the resources, even racing on the rivers and the lakes around here, hunting around these areas.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking. So resources. We're talking rice. We're talking game.
Yep.
Fish, things like that.
Yeah.
Any other resources in particular around here that they were fighting over?
There was they found things. The plants that they use in the woodland area. A lot of it was used for medicine, and even the foods. Some of the plants are used for foods, and that's what they were fighting for, for survival against the Lakota people. Trapping areas, big game, all this stuff, and small game. The plants, the trees, and everything else like that they are fighting the Lakota for. And that's why they pushed them out of this whole area.
Where did the Ojibwe come from?
Originally, we were in the East Coast. You could triangle from where present-day Montreal is up to Hudson Bay, over to the state of Maine, and back to Montreal, in a whole area like that. And about 1,500 years ago, we started this migration, and other tribes came with us, like the Ottawa and Potawatomis, and as we were migrating up the river, the present-day St. Lawrence River, up the Great Lakes, and that we encountered other tribes like the Iroquois, and then they thought that we were invading them, so we had a war with them too. until we finally told them we just want to pass through. And so they gave us a wampum belt to recognize that we were just traveling through.
Sort of like a passport or
Yeah.
something like that, or
Yeah.
yeah.
And so we migrated, and some of the other tribes jumped off, like in Michigan, present-day Michigan, and until we finally came into Lake Superior, and where the Ojibwe split what they said, the northern and the southern half of Lake Superior. They went around it and met in present-day Duluth, and we met again. That's when we started meeting the Lakota, and we started having fights with them until the rest of the Ojibways migrated came, and that's when we pushed them out.
What kind of numbers are we talking about as far as that migration is concerned? You know, like how many, like what the people who came from the East Coast all the way over to Duluth, basically.
Boy, it's hard to estimate as far as numbers, and keep in mind that this migration took about 500 years.
Yeah.
For it to come that far.
Long time.
And it wasn't until the 1600s that the Ojibways got the advantage over them, because we had first contact with the French and Dutch traders, fur traders, for guns and knives. And we used those to push the Lakota out of Minnesota. As far as numbers, you're talking probably tens of thousands of Ojibways that came through.
Yeah.
That came through. And
how are tribal relations now between the Ojibwe and the Lakota?
they're very good. We still have that thing, and we still have those tales about those wars, but we have the respect for each other. Matter of fact, we have ceremonies even today to help keep to strengthen that bond between our tribes. Mm-hmm. We still have them every spring, every fall, and they're held within all over all these reservations. As a matter of fact, there's ones going on this weekend up in Cass Lake, and it's called a drum ceremony.
A jump ceremony?
A drum.
Oh, a drum, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a drum ceremony. And we have had these ceremonies for many years.
A celebration of unity, or?
Yep.
Yeah.
And during the ceremonies, during the day is the men's portion of the ceremony. In the evening time, it's the women's part of the ceremony. And it's sometimes there is some Lakotas that come up for the ceremonies, but this is to honor them, because the tale that we that was told to us why how we got these drums was there's a encampment, this Lakota encampment. It was a lady, they call her a white shell woman, and they she was around the Sisselton area, and their camp was attacked one morning by the cavalry.
United States Cavalry.
Yes,
yeah.
United States Cavalry. And she ran into the wetlands to get away from. She could hear all the shooting, all the crying, all the people out there. And she hid in the wetland. And she figured that once they're done, they'll leave. But they didn't. They made a encampment there. And so after 4 days of not eating and being in the water, being cold, she had this dream, this vision. And the spirit came to her, and the spirit asked her, why are you laying in this water? She said, I'm cold because those soldiers are over there. And the spirit says to get up. They won't see you. Being scared, she got up and she said, you're hungry. Yes, I haven't eaten. Well, they're eating over there. Go over there and eat. I'm not going over there because they recognize me. I said, no, they're not. They won't recognize you. Go over there and eat. So she did. And then the spirit told her that you go in that tent, you'll find this round thing. And you take that to your people. And you make these drums. And these 28 songs. And you take this and give it to your worst enemies, which was the Ojibwe people. So they brought it to White Earth. And ever since then, there was no more wars between the Lakota and the Ojibwe.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, do they still have those drums?
Yes.
Those exact drums?
Yes.
Where are those held, or where are they stored or kept?
People have them in their homes. Certain people have them in their homes, and they bring them out.
For this type of ceremony?
For this
the
ceremony.
Drum ceremony.
Yeah. I was given one, but I haven't had a chance yet to bring it out. I was given one.
Yeah.
And which I should actually do, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I just haven't had the time to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose then, I mean, if we're talking about hundreds of years and stuff too, there's probably some intermarrying and stuff between the tribes and all that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Bring them closer together and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. When I worked for the tribe, I had access to the enrollment book, and some of the, you just kind of, one day I was just reading it and I was looking at it, and it identifies your tribe you're on. And some of them said Captain Sioux, in the enrollments. They wrote it. So, but there's been a lot of intermarriage between tribes, and not only like the Lakota, but also Canada, Wisconsin, all over like that. And there's a concern by their parents or grandparents to have their children enrolled because of what was put in place back in 1961, where to be identified as a Native American Ojibwe, we had to have a quart of blood.
The quantum...
a blood quantum.
Right.
And because they had blood from Ojibwe or from the tribe, let's say Navajo, for example, they recognize the Ojibwe part, but they don't recognize the Navajo part. As far as so.
Has that been changed now?
No, it hasn't, and we're working on it to change that.
So that any amount of native blood would suffice to meet the blood quantum requirement, regardless of which tribe it came from.
Yep.
Yeah. So around here, this is a very unique area in Minnesota in that we've got, you've got White Earth, we've got Red Lake, we've got Leech Lake, we've got Cass Lake. There's lots of different, reservations around this area. What are the differences between the different, is it a band? Is that the right, or?
Well, that's what the government, back in when they established the reservations, was to locate it. White Earth was created to move all the Indians in the state of Minnesota onto one reservation. But that didn't work. People didn't want to leave their homes. So they stayed on their own reservation. That's how White Earth was. They were promised that you come here, at that time, we were a hunting and gathering society. And they wanted to make us into farmers. And a lot of it wasn't suitable for farming. especially on the eastern part of the reservation.
When was this?
Back in 1870s and
Okay.
that. And they, if you come there, they would give you a tract of land. For a head of household, they give you 160 acres. For each child, they give you another 40 acres. And they want you to farm it. A lot of it people did like doing that. They still liked to be the hunting and gathering person that they grew up to be. And but then a lot of the land was prime timber, white pine, red pine. And the timber industry came along and we wanted the timber. And a lot of them didn't realize when they were signing the paper, they thought they were just, giving the timber away. Mm-hmm. Here they were signing out their property away. And
was that legal? I mean, as far as
it wasn't.
It's a reservation. And when I think of the reservation, I think this is land that is tribal land, and that it would be owned by a person who was an enrolled member of a tribe, and not an outsider like a timber company.
A lot of people didn't know that at that time.
So those were invalid transfers then, illegal transfers.
Mm-hmm. They ended up fighting that, going back and trying to correct that with the Whitest Land Settlement Act in 1986. And a lot of it, even for the children's land, it was signed over by the parents to the timber company. Well, a lot of people really didn't have the concept of money, commerce. So they sold that land, so they go back into the band office and get some more land. And they'll sell that too, get some more land. So at one time, White Earth was, by 1910, White Earth started off by having 844,440 acres, a large chunk, a 36 by 36 square mile area. And by 1910, it was down to 800 acres, just where the government office, the school, and government buildings were at.
Where was that?
At White Earth.
But at like Ponsford or
up in the community of White Earth.
Oh, okay. There's an actual town or something like that. Okay, all right. Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it was disappeared in ownership, and a lot of it went into these timber companies' ownership. And the state and the counties told, well, this isn't tribal land anymore, so we're going to tax you. The timber company says, well, we're not going to pay no taxes, so they just forfeit the land to the state and county.
And then did it eventually revert to the tribe, or how did that work?
Few different acts that we did, that we got some of the land back.
Mm-hmm.
White Earth right now only owns about 10% of the land of it.
When you say White Earth, what do you mean?
White Earth Reservation.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Only owns 10% of the land.
So the rest of it is owned by whom?
50% is publicly owned, and the rest is either by state or county or federal ownership.
Mm-hmm.
But and then,
what about private, non-tribal ownership? Is there any of that on the reservation?
50%.
How much?
50%.
50%.
Yeah.
50% of it is owned privately by people who are not enrolled members of the tribe.
Yeah.
Yet it's still the reservation.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, in 1986, the White Earth Land Settlement Act, you know, people were trying to sell their land for different reasons. And they could because the title was clouded because of these illegal transactions
Right.
being done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so there was a thing passed by an agreement between, I think his name was Arlen Stanglin, who was a congressman for that area at that time, back in '86, and the tribal chairman. And a lot of tribal people were against this because they thought that the land that was in the state and county ownership and federal ownership should go back to the tribe. Well, in order to do this, they put down, well, we'll give you 10,000 acres back at $10 million. And that was the agreement that these two came up with. That's what people are against, and it cleared the title for individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So who wanted to sell their land? For all the properties that in Becker County, Clearwater County, and Monoman County, they're all cleared up in 2 weeks. And the 10,000 acres that was to come back to the tribe, it took 27 years to come back because it was going through the federal government, and that was just
And then who got the 10 million?
the tribe finally got the 10 million,
Yeah.
but they just the things that they had to go through to get that portion back.
So it would take 27 years to do that. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, the money that they got, they used a lot of it to open up that casino in Monoman.
Is that the Shooting Star? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess I didn't even think about asking about the casino business on White Earth too, but I suppose that's a major source of revenue.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
For jobs, they employ around, I know when they topped off, I think it was like about 1,200 people. I think right now they're around 800 people that they employ.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not just tribal members; it's all kinds of people that they employ.
Is that the only casino on White Earth, or are there others? Okay.
That's the only casino on White Earth.
Yeah. Now, as I was kind of asking before about, like you hear that Red Lake is different than the other reservations, and just my basic understanding is that they call that a closed reservation as opposed to the other reservations which are open. I don't know exactly what that means, but is the I guess just from a cultural and tribal perspective, the folks who live up in Red Lake and the folks who live on White Earth, they're all Ojibwe Indians, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so what's the why is there this separation, between the people?
This has to go back to 1936, the Howard Wheeler Act, and the federal government didn't like the way some of the tribes are operating, because, for example, White Earth would have a headsman, a head person, and each community had a council. And so when he went to visit with the Bureau of Indian Affairs or Washington, D.C., he would have to come back as all the councils, then go back and tell what the decision was, what the people made. Well, they didn't like that because it was taking too much time. So they ended up coming up with eliminating our traditional forms of government, where you had the headsman and all the general councils. Now they have one chairman, a secretary treasurer, and split the reservations in districts.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's for each reservation.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And there's only two reservations that rejected that: Red Lake and the Navajos. And that's the reason why they have it as a closed reservation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not totally closed off, but they can set up their own laws and everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Red Lake, whereas White Earth, we call it an open reservation because the ownership is checkerboard.
Yeah.
We regulate our own people and exercise our rights on either public or tribal land.
Mm-hmm. But in Red Lake, it's not a checkerboard. Basically, it's entirely owned
By the tribe.
By the tribe.
Yeah.
Right. Looking back, you said that a decision like that was made in the 30s, or
Yep.
yeah. Looking back, do you think that Red Lake made the right decision by doing that, or do you think that maybe White Earth should have also rejected it, or I mean, a
lot of people kind of
Yeah.
look at that situation. In dealing with, I got a lot of I know a lot of people from Red Lake, and they like what they, being as a closed reservation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we can't go up there and hunt and fish.
You cannot.
No,
Okay.
that's only reserved for Red Lakers,
Mm-hmm.
people from Red Lake. Whereas down here, it's open up to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But we only regulate the native people, not non-Indians. We have to leave that up to the state of Minnesota to regulate non-Indians and fish and game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even the land itself, tribal members could own their own property on the reservation.
Up there.
No, here.
Oh, here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we're up in Red Lake. You just go in there and the tribe own the land.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And
you're more of a tenant, or
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here, we can go and get land to build a home or something, put a home in. But we can also purchase land our own selves and put it in.
There's a little more freedom and liberty involved in the
Yeah.
White Earth system.
Some is people look at that, it's kind of 50-50 right now as far as, was it a good decision, was it a bad decision? Some people think it was a bad decision because it'd be more closed up, but it's hard to be closed up when you don't own 50% of the land on a reservation.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's still the same people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess at some point in time, whenever these reservations were created, that some these people just happened to be living up in that area, and some of the Ojibwe happened to be living in other places, and they just sort of migrated over to the White Earth Reservation, and then some of them migrated to the Red Lake Reservation. But there's no, I mean, it's not like one family was up there, or a series of families was up there, and then a series of families were down here. It was basically almost arbitrary as to like who ended up there, or here, or Cass Lake, or
Yeah.
Leech Lake, and it's all Ojibwe people.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole concept of bands, I think this is what I was kind of asking about before. That was a concept that didn't really exist.
No, that was implemented by the federal government.
Right, because the federal government says this is one reservation, and so you're the White Earth Band, and here's another reservation. So that was all just done by the federal government. There was never really any sort of real distinction between the people.
Well, they don't talk about as the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my family originally came from Gull Lake area, down by Brainerd.
Mm-hmm.
So we were referred to as the Mississippi Band. The people that was around White Earth originally was referred to as the Pillager Band. The people up in Red Lake was referred to as the Pembina Band. People around Lake Superior Band. So we have all these other bands
Mm-hmm.
at the different locations of where they came from.
Okay, but yeah, so the names of the real bands were established, but then it just sort of, because of the establishment of the reservation system, then it just kind of, they all got recategorized or something like that, but had nothing to do with any of the history of the tribe itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any sites, or physical locations in particular around this area that are of any sort of special significance? Places, where meetings happened, or burial grounds, or things like that are identifiable, and that you might be, teaching young people about or bringing them to as part of your curriculum?
Well, one is up over at Tamarack Refuge.
Yep.
The other one is up by Itasca State Park.
Mm-hmm.
There's some burial mounds up there.
Yep.
Even along the Crow Wing River, there's burial mounds that people don't realize, that they think it's just a mound.
Yeah.
But they're actually a burial mound from the people before. And that's who the Lakota people were tied to before the Ojibways come in. That was not the Ojibwe people's way of burying our people. That was a different culture.
So Lakota would be creating the burial mounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, the burial mounds, you could follow those all the way down to St. Louis, Missouri. There was a culture there that they call Cahokie, and they kind of spread along the Mississippi, came up the Mississippi, along the Missouri and Ohio, the trade routes and everything like that. Also, that it was like that civilization disappeared, but there's all these other tribes that was actually part of it. Part of those people, and they were the ones that were considered the mound people because of the way they buried their people, their dead.
Mm-hmm.
And even their places of worship would be big mounds, because the one in Cahokie, that's 100 feet high, that was built by hand.
And that's something that is known today, like the location of it, and people,
Yeah.
is it on like a federal land or something like
Yeah,
that?
it's on federal land. There's a
Okay.
park, like a park there, and protected. And there's some places up by the Rainy River
Mm-hmm.
that has big mound systems
Mm-hmm.
up in that area. So there's, especially around Ottertail River, Ottertail County, in that area, there's a lot of mounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, even in this area, there are some small mounds.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that they think it's just a hill.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Ojibwe language, and I understand that you teach that, or you've taught that.
Yeah,
over the years.
I teach that. If I was going to start, I would say, Mike Swan, Shakara Shia Dishkan, Wasamako Indigo, Swan Dino Dam, Injaka Kago, Kawababa Gay King, Ishkan Ganing. What I was saying is, Mike Swan is my English name. My Ojibwe name is Shining Bear, and I belong to the Loon clan. And I'm from the village of Pine Point on the Wardius Reservation.
Mm-hmm.
So just introductions, teaching introductions like that. Not everybody, even kids, don't have an Ojibwe name. And a lot of them are coming to me and asking for a Ojibwe name, and which I do. I give
So
them.
you have the authority to give them these types of names.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that?
Well, I'm also a spiritual advisor on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
And they would bring tobacco to me, and generally I say, well, I'll come back in 4 days and I'll have your name. Or I could sit, if something would come to me right away, then I'll give them their name right away.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if I was driving and all of a sudden a wolf runs across my path or something like that, that means something. That someone's is coming to me and asking for a name, or looking at a bird or something like that.
So you get some sort of sign.
Yep, I get something I sign about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of it with the kids. A lot of kids, even adults. And
That never got one.
Huh?
Adults that never got a name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happens if they don't like the name you gave them? That's it. It doesn't matter.
Well, there's some people that have 3, 4 names.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they use different names for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One would be one for every day. One would be for ceremonies. One would be for something with their families. A lot of people have nicknames.
Yeah.
In a way, there's so. Growing up, there were some old people in the village that I never knew the real English name.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them never had English names. There's my uncle's wife. Her name was Shadud. What meant strong north wind. I didn't know what her real name is. That's what I called her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or what her English name was. My grandfather's name was Aidab, which meant carrying a big stick. My grandfather name was Shade, and that means like a keeper of ceremonies. And but my father never had an Indian name. At his time, that's when they were taken to residential schools and not permitted to speak the language or be referred to as in having a name. It's just I never had an Indian name until I was about 35.
Who gave you yours?
It was this guy. We were meeting one time I was meeting at a gathering, not a meeting, at a gathering, and I just kind of mentioned that I should ask for a Ojibwe name. And this guy across from me, he says, "I'm glad you asked that," he said. Kind of looked at him, he said, Wasamakwa. And I kind of looked at him and I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Does that mean shiny bear?" And I'm not meaning, a light or anything like that. He said, "What I see is a bear. I seen a bear with a light behind it and highlighting the silhouette of the bear." The silhouette of the bear, he said. That came to me before, and I knew someone was going to say something about asking for a name.
Oh, so he knew that before you even asked him.
Yeah. So that
was sort of a premonition that this was going to happen.
Yeah, and so that was a name that was given to me.
Yeah. Oh. And do you use that name for
Yep.
different purposes?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. Is there a written form of the Ojibwe language?
No, there isn't. It's not a written language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spoken language,
mm-hmm.
A descriptive language.
Yeah.
For example, Nodin, Shawano. It's a strong south wind today. Mm-hmm. That's a descriptive of what the language is about. Minnow gets good, or you're having a good day, or you're just in a conversation, a small conversation with everybody, and a lot of people, um, when you look at the English language, you would see it like a sentence of how you write the sentence, whereas the Ojibwe is more descriptive of how you interact with that person. So that's the difference. It was never. We have people trying to write it.
Well, you see it sometimes. There's a attempt at that. Sometimes in the local businesses, it'll say like "boujou" or something on the door and things like that. But that's not actually the written form of that language.
Yeah, because "boujou" it sounds like French.
French, right? Bonjour, right? Yeah.
Whereas to the Ojibways, "boujou" was like a greeting of a character in our stories, not a boujou, but it's shortened as in a greeting as boujou, that's how it came. And sometimes we say anin as hi, and we got a story about that too. Mm-hmm. Long time ago, when the Jesuits were coming across the Great Lakes, they came to a Ojibwe village. The first time they ever seen a Jesuit. And he gets up, he puts his arms out, he says, bonjour. And the Ojibways all looked at each other and said, anin. Because anin also means what in our language. Mm-hmm. So we make a joke, as I was saying there, when he said bonjour, we said, what? Mm-hmm. And they thought that was funny because they thought it was a misinterpretation of our language.
Okay, so we talked about the history of the Ojibwe in this area. Here's a question that I was hoping you might be able to answer for me because I've thought about this. Sometimes I have these strange thoughts, especially in the wintertime. Around here it gets to be 20, 30 below.
Yep.
You know it's coming, right?
Yeah, I know it's coming.
How in the world do people survive? In those times between before we had electricity and gas and all that other stuff. How do they survive those 20, 30 degree below nights and what do they do during that time?
Well, during the day, the men would set up traps for small game, rabbits, beaver, mink, anything, and they'd bring them back and eat them up and cook them in there. In the wigwams. The wigwams were there was actually two holes. One was for the fire in the center, and on the other end would be another hole dug into the ground, and that was for valuables and for food to be kept. Also, keeping it in the ground, or if they had any type of valuables that they wanted to keep, that would be there too. And a lot of them would be just staying inside that, inside the wigwam.
How big is the wigwam?
It would vary on the family size.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it would be per family. Each family would have one of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what would be the definition of a family? Like, I mean,
well, even the mother, father, their kids, it might be 4 or 6 kids, and the grandparents.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of just basically the same sort of traditional idea of a family that we would have today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, kids are, they always go outside and play during the wintertime too, no matter how cold it is.
Yeah.
And to keep them inside, we had a character we call Wendigo, a giant ice creature that eat humans. And you don't whistle at night, otherwise you're calling them. And so the kids will get scared, so they just stay inside. As once they're inside, then usually the grandparents would sit there and tell them stories of different stories and myths
to keep them occupied.
Yeah, keep them occupied, and they're also used as a teaching tool about why does a birch bark have black marks? Why does a woodpecker have a red head? Why does the loon have red eyes and a flat body, and all these different other stories we had. Mm-hmm. And that's what the grandparents would end up doing, telling all these different stories to the kids and teaching them like that, and to keep them occupied.
Are these types of stories still remembered today?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that tradition is continued.
Oh, yeah. Even today, I get invited to different camps to come and do some storytelling. And they asked me, well, how much time do you want? I said, how much time do you want to give me? I said, I could do this for a couple hours or more, just on storytelling. Because of the storytelling that I learned from other people, listening to other people telling stories and passing those on. Yeah. And a lot of the kids will remember those stories.
Does any of that get written down?
Yeah, some of it does. Yeah, if you wanted to go out to the internet, you could find some of it. Find some of the stories on.
But most of it is just oral tradition passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking at your resume and stuff on teaching the Native culture, and I came across something I thought was kind of interesting. It was called the Knowledge Bowl. What's the Knowledge Bowl?
Well, that's where the students will learn about language, history, culture, traditions. And I was first asked about it if I could work with kids in 1999 in Detroit Lakes with some kids over there. And there was 6 of them when we started. And so I worked with them in the different languages, identifying animals, the week of the day, the months, and everything else like that. I was working with them and family members.
Just memorizing facts and stuff like that, basically, is what that was.
So they compete against other schools in northern Minnesota. And every year they have, every spring they have a state competition. And on the second year, these students are starting to get pretty good. And so we went to the state competition, and they made it to the finals. And they're tied up. One last question to ask. I'm sitting there, sitting on my hands because I couldn't do nothing. I was their coach. I couldn't do nothing. And the moderator says, in English, what does macoons mean? And I'm sitting there, yes, yes, yes. And sure enough, the team buzzed in. I'm thinking, yes, yes. And all my students' minds went blank.
Oh, no.
And they said, time is up. The other team buzzed in. Bear Cub. And they won the championship. And I'm just...
It came down to just that one question.
Yep.
What was it, Buttercup?
But Bear Cub.
Oh, Bear Cub. Okay.
Yeah. Macoons.
Macoos.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always remind it. I still write to the students.
They're never going to remember. They're never going to forget that now, right?
No. Every time I see them, I always remind them.
Yeah.
Hey, what's macoons made? Yeah. And they just start laughing. And that made them determine the next 2 years where they didn't lose a match. And teams were afraid to meet up with them until and they won the state a couple times.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm.
State competition. And so most of them were going to be graduating that year, and we went to the state competition, and we went up, and all of a sudden we got upset by this other school.
Beside
This other school upset them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they, I turned around because I heard all kinds of cheering. You see some old ladies around their 70s and 80s dancing. Detroit Lakes got beat. Detroit Lakes got beat. You can hear it howling down a hallway. People are yelling, Detroit Lakes got beat.
Well,
everybody was.
I mean, you must have been a good team if everybody's celebrating if they beat you. It's like everybody celebrates when the Patriots lose the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. But it was a learning experience. It was a fun experience.
Yeah.
And they still do it today, but that was something that really looked at, and that was when I first actually started teaching with students.
Mm-hmm.
I was still working full time, and I would come there after school, after work, just to work for the students. That also gave me the incentive of getting my teaching license, and because throughout the whole time, I was still gathering all this knowledge about our culture, our history, our language, and working with kids and teaching them because at that time it was a real shortage of teachers with license to go into the schools and talk with them. And I had to renew it a couple times, but I enjoyed it, working with the students and doing that. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at retiring from that coming up this year.
Okay.
But it's something that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I read somewhere recently that, there's 3 kinds of unhappy men, and one of them was the kind who knows but doesn't teach. Mm-hmm. And so with your knowledge, the fact that you've been able to teach probably is a good source of happiness for you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like you've accomplished something, done something for, the next generation.
Yeah, and I looked there, even our village, where I live at, in Pine Point. I came back in 1990 from going to college and working up in Cass Lake for 5 years. And I was offered a job to come back to my home and work for the tribe in natural resources. Mm-hmm. And
you did that for about over 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was almost 35 years I was in that field.
Uh-huh.
And some of the young men came to me and said, we heard that you know how to sing. I said, yes, I do. I said, well, let's sit down and I'll teach you. And I said, first of all, what you got to learn is you guys got to work together in a beat. So we all started. I said, see, you sound like a 3-legged horse and they're going down the pavement. They all started laughing. I said, you got to go as one beat together. Yeah. And there's 7 of them together to work together and one beat. So we'll work on that for 2 weeks. So we did.
Fundamentals.
Yep. Then we'll learn a song. And there's hundreds of songs to learn. Mm-hmm. So doing that, even coming back in the 90s and start teaching like that for men. They weren't kids. These were men that wanted to learn how to sing. Mm-hmm. Young men. Mm-hmm. So that was, and they're still singing today. Those guys are still singing today. Even young kids. One of the things that I'm happy about is when I used to, before that, I used to go to Paulo's, or I used to have the guy that taught me when we approached him back around 1978 when I was going to school. His name was Moses Smith, and he lived up in Grand Portage, and he married a lady from Grand Portage. But I met him in Duluth, and me and three other guys approached him to ask him to teach us how to sing. And that was first of all, the first fundamentals and learning. Then the songs would come. And over time, I had a collection of songs on old cassette tapes. And a young man approached me over a year ago and asked if I would pass those tapes on to him, and he would want to put them on digital, and so that
they'd be preserved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I gave him all the tapes that I did.
Yeah.
Over time.
What is a sweat lodge?
A sweat lodge actually is a ceremony that you go in, and they say that you're entering the womb of Mother Earth. And it doesn't, you go in there, you don't have any bad feelings about anybody. You're open-minded, not to be scared of the heat, not to be scared of the darkness. And some people are kind of reborn in there again, going to the lodge. I have ran some myself over time. I remember this one particular time that I ran a lodge, and it was for a man who was in Vietnam, and the war was over for about 20 years, and he was still suffering post-traumatic syndrome. And we brought him into the lodge, and I tell him, let go of what's bothering you. And he started talking about all the experiences that was happening in Vietnam. He never told anybody about it. He finally let go of it in that lodge. And we got done. And I seen him 2 weeks later. I seen him, and he came and gave me a great big hug. I said, thank you. And his wife came over and gave me a big hug. And she said, what'd you do to him? I kind of looked at her and said, what do you mean? Ever since he went to your place, he's been different. A lot different. I said, all we did was we took him into the sweat lodge and got him to release that pain that was bothering him all these years. And it's a place to go pray that we go to and have these ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's hot.
Yes.
How is it heated, or how does that work?
We heat some rocks we call grandfathers, and we'll put them in the middle. Mm-hmm. And we'll use like cedar water sprinkle onto the rocks, and that heats it up.
It's similar to like a sauna almost in a way, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The ideal is not to punish you with heat.
Right.
The ideal is that you're going in there to pray.
So is it what's on top? I mean, is it like just kind of dug into the earth, or is it how?
Oh no, it's like a wigwam. It is built like a dome shape. Before they used to line it with bark, but nowadays they use tarps on it. Mm. Some people use plastic, but we say don't use plastic because you got to let it breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but use tarps if you have tarps.
Right. Hmm. So let's get into your involvement in the local theater and acting and stuff like that. So that's actually how I met you, because we're both on the board of the Northern Light Opera Company. We had Paul in the other day. I think you saw that.
Yeah.
And so how long have you been on the board of the Northern Light Opera Company?
On the board, I would say about 5 years.
About 5. I think it's about almost the same amount of time as I have, I think,
Yeah.
really. Yeah. And then you acted in one of the productions?
I acted in 3 productions, actually.
Uh-huh.
The first one was Andy, Get Your Gun.
Uh-huh.
That was actually the first play I ever did. I never acted before. And it was kind of a humorous way that I met Paul and Pat Dove.
Mm-hmm.
And because one day I got a phone call, and it was Paul Dove, and he says, we are looking for a native person to play Sitting Bull in our upcoming production of Annie Get Your Gun. And I thought that was a prank call. And talking with him more, and I said, well, I got a question for you. I said, how'd you get my number? He says, well, I went to the Whiter's Elders, and I just asked, I said, we're looking for someone to play Sitting Bull in Annie Get Your Gun. And these elderly ladies on this one table said, oh, you got to talk to Mike Swan. Yeah. Oh, here's his number. And
well, they knew you were a ham or something? Or
that was the first time I ever acted.
Yeah.
But
how did you find acting? Did you enjoy it?
Well, I thought about it, and I thought to myself, what I had to do was compare it, because in performing in front of people, I did a lot of lectures in front of large groups, and I danced at powwows in front of large groups, being spotlighted by in groups, and even in a tour that we did in Europe, in Switzerland, where you're dancing by yourself and spotlight on you and you're performing.
Sure.
So I figured, well, it can't really be much more than that. And so I went to the audition. I sat in the back, watching all these young people up there giving a monologue and singing. And so they called my name. And so I went up there and I said, I really didn't prepare a monologue. I could tell you a story, a native story. And my singing is not like opera, like the people that you're used to. But I could sing, our native style. And so they had me do a demonstration. And I can still picture their faces. And I got done. They're all looking at me up there, and all their mouths were kind of wide open. And all of a sudden the director says, we'll let you know. I said, wow, that's it of my acting career.
Was that Lisa? Was Lisa the director? Was she the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll let you know.
Uh-huh.
Well, a couple weeks later, they called me up and they told me, you got the part of Sitting Bull. I played Sitting Bull. I was a butler and shoreman for South Pacific. I had to learn French. Mm-hmm. I don't know French, but I had to learn how to speak French. Mm-hmm. Then I was a drunken garbage man in My Fair Lady.
Okay.
I was teasing them. I hope you guys ain't category me here.
Yeah, stereotyping you or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. Acting it can be challenging, I think.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is fun.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's fun when you get into it.
Right.
And being that character.
Yeah.
And learning all your parts.
My experience with acting is I acted in Caleb's movies, and then I was also the acting coach. So I had never acted before, but then I was also the acting coach, and so one thing I read. I always repeat this saying, and Caleb knows I say this all the time, but it says that the foundation of acting is the reality of doing. That's pretty deep, isn't it? but I think it's harder than, like, I think a lot of people think, oh, what do I got to do? I say a line, okay, yeah, no problem, right? But to really get into the mindset of the character and thinking, okay, I'm not the character, but I have to act like the character. When I have to act like the character, that basically means I have to be the character, right?
Yeah.
And I have to do what the character would do. So,
when I played the drunken garbage man in My Fair Lady, I quit drinking back in 1990, and some old friends of mine said, "Wow, that should come back to you pretty easy, staggering around Park Rabbits." But yeah,
so congratulations. Then it was that 30 years sobriety then. Yeah, good. That's amazing. So, and then you're also associated with the Guthrie.
Yes, I was. Yeah. Yes, I am. I was asked to be on the Native American Native Advisory Committee, and what the committee does is look to bring more awareness into the Guthrie in some of the productions,
right?
And to go over some of the scripts to be more. So it won't be so stereotyped or something like that.
Yeah.
We did worked on a thing recently called Shane, which was a Western.
That's the movie Shane, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the same, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it's based on a musical.
Uh-huh.
And a play now.
Okay.
And they just had one where a couple of natives written a play and produced it and directed it in the Guthrie. It just got done with a run of it. As a matter of fact, I was really surprised that they got a well-known actor to play into it. Wes Studi, who played in Dancing with Wolves.
Oh yeah. He was wasn't he kind of like the he was like sort of like the bad guy in Last of Mohicans, right? Yeah, Magua. Yeah. Okay. He was in that.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Matter of fact, I met him twice before, and the first time I met him was I asked him, "How come he always plays a bad Indian?"
Yeah.
He just laughed.
Well, he kind of has a mean look to him. Let's face it. He does, and he does that scowl really good. But okay, so I got two more questions for you because we got to wrap up here. They're both kind of random. The first one is, do you see Josh Dobbs as being the future quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings? Now we're sitting on. I think right now 6-2 or something like that. Cousins out for the or 6-4, I should say. Cousins out for the rest of the year. Has Dobbs shown you enough to make you think that we ought to give this guy a look for, not just this season, but even beyond the season, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell. What I like about him is him being mobile, being able to get out of being sacked and able to rush for a touchdown or something like that. Where Cousins wasn't that mobile.
Right.
And I like him that way. His arm strength, as far as it's kind of questionable going downfield a lot. But I don't know if it's for the future, but, they got to look at something,
It makes it fun to watch now, I think.
Yes,
right?
I thought it was entertaining when they... when they beat Atlanta, I thought that was entertaining.
Yeah, and it was so deflating when cousins went out because you thought to yourself, oh, here we go again. It's the Minnesota Vikings. This is the way it's always going to be around here. And,
well, we're used to disappointment.
We're used to disappointment. If there's anything true about Vikings fans, that's it. We are used to disappointment. But okay, and so the last question I have is, do you have any advice for young people in general?
Wow. I guess in general, for young people when they just come out of school, or out of high school or college, is to look at a field that you really enjoy doing. When I came out of college, when I was in college, I looked at it and I thought, what do I want to be when I grow up? And growing up, I liked being in the woods. I liked to fish. I liked to be with my father. And all this stuff like that, being out there. So I studied biology, and that's how I got into that field. And when I got back and started working with White Earth every day, it didn't feel like a job. It was something that I enjoyed doing. Mm-hmm. That you didn't have to force me to get up and work to do something. It was something I enjoyed. You didn't have to push me to do something. I was looking at it. I was ready for it ahead of time and everything like that. Find something that you enjoy doing in your life.
It's more important than just maximizing the amount of money that you can make.
Uh-huh.
I tend to agree with that too, because you've seen a lot of people with money, they're miserable, but then you see, some people out there who don't have much, but they enjoy what they're doing and they're getting a lot out of life.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure chatting with you this afternoon, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on the NLOC board and on other projects. And thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep, Mike Swan. Thank you.
Thank you.